Welcome back to the Cultural Curriculum Chat podcast, where we honor the stories, lived experiences, and leadership journeys that help us teach, lead, and live with greater clarity and courage. I'm your host, Jeba Edmonds, educator, cultural consultant, and cultural storyteller. And today's conversation is especially powerful because we're talking about equity beyond the buzzwords, what it really looks like in practice, what leaders often get wrong, and what it takes to sustain meaningful change. I'm honored to welcome Celeste Warren. Celeste is a visionary leader with an incredible 28-year career at a global Fortune 100 company where she rose to the role of vice president and chief diversity and inclusion officer. Since retiring, she's continued her mission through Celeste Warren Consulting, helping organizations build fair, equitable systems that actually work. She's also the co founder of Destination STEM Incorporated, a nonprofit she launched with her children to support students of color pursuing STEM degrees because equity doesn't stop at the workplace, it starts with access and opportunity. And most recently, Celeste is the author of her new book. Congratulations! The Truth About Equity, a title that says exactly what our conversation is going to be about. Celeste, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you for that wonderful, wonderful welcome. And it's so great to be having this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. And now let's get into it. You spent nearly 3 decades inside this global organization, ultimately leading to diversity and inclusion at the highest level possible. Can you reflect on your journey for us and what did you learn along the way with these large systems?
Yeah, it has been a journey of constant learning. And,
Yes.
a lot of people say, oh, well, Celeste, you're in this role or that role, or you were promoted here or there. You know everything now. And I used to just laugh because my journey, my professional journey, and my life's journey has been about learning, adapting, course correcting, and not just learning from, the successes, but especially learning from the missteps and the failures, because we've definitely had many of those. And if you don't learn from them, then you have a. It's part of having. I was teaching some kids the other day the difference between a growth mindset and a fixed mindset. And I try to demonstrate and live by a growth mindset, those principles. But I tell you, it's been an up and down journey. There were days that I felt so energized and enthusiastic about what we were doing, how we were approaching it, and then other days where I would feel like, oh my God, am I going to get through this day? And I,
Hmm.
and it's but again, I knew, especially when I stepped into this role, the CDO role 10 years ago, I knew that even if I was having a bad day, that I had to make sure that I had to flip it around quickly because I was speaking on behalf of tens of thousands of people within the organization that many of them hadn't found the power to elevate their own voices yet. And so, for me to have a bad day and not do what I was supposed to be doing, I was letting down so many different people. So I had to learn to kind of really make sure that I was demonstrating servant leadership as well. But I tell you, it was an up and down journey, but I just loved it, and I wouldn't have changed it for the world.
I love that. And I love how you even talked about the fix versus the growth mindset. And even as the CDO, you still had to maintain that mindset because, even when you said, oh, you're at this, elevated leadership role, you must know. But I love how you're saying, even at that level, you're still learning
Mhm.
as a servant leader for tens of thousands of people. And I really want you to also share with us like those early misconceptions about that, DE and I in the
Uh-huh.
workplace. Um, you know, we're still trying to figure it out. It's like it's the naughty three-letter, acronym. And can you share with us like a time that you experienced that, pushback and how you corrected it?
Oh, very much so. When I was starting out in the role, I can remember we had just finished the strategy. And I was going around in my team, going around and talking with various different leaders about the strategy. And I remember this one senior leader, he was over at the time, mergers and acquisitions. And he just kept canceling the meeting, canceling the meeting. I'd reschedule, cancel the meeting. So finally, I got an opportunity. I said to his assistant, "Look, I really need to talk to him, and can you really just make sure that this stays on his calendar?" And luckily, she was someone who was very much an advocate for diversity and inclusion, and she did do that. And so when I sat down to meet with him, first of all, he was on the phone when I stepped into his office, and he kept going, wait a minute, ignoring me. And then it had to have been close to 10 minutes later, he finally gets off the phone. Well, while he was on the phone, I took that opportunity to kind of look around his office and looked at the pictures, looked at the various different things that he had on his desk, on hanging on the wall, so I could get an idea of who he was. There was one picture that had him, and I assumed at the time his wife, and then a young woman and another young man. And so when he got off the phone, we sat down and started the conversation. And so I started talking to him about the importance of integrating diversity and inclusion into his M&A strategies.
Mm.
And he was like, Celeste, let me stop you. I don't get it. I don't understand why you're talking to me. I don't understand where diversity and inclusion plays a role in mergers and acquisitions. It doesn't make sense to me. So, at least he was being honest about
Mhm.
where he stood, because I can deal with a direct approach. I can deal with someone
Yes.
saying to me, "This is how I feel." And so I said, "Okay." I said, "You know what? Um, I see this picture on your desk. I'm assuming that's your wife and your daughter. Who's the young man?" And because he didn't look like them at all.
Yeah.
And he said, "Oh, that's her fiance. They're getting ready to get married." And he was beaming and so excited. You could see he was very proud of the fact that his daughter was marrying. And I said, "Oh, that's very, very nice." I said, "What do you know about their family, his family?" And
Mhm.
he said, "Well, what do you mean?" He goes, "Well, we've had dinner once, and they seem like a real nice family, nice, his parents." And I started asking him questions about, well, what faith are they? What are their values? What do they believe in? And he
Mm.
said, "Well, I don't know." And I said, "Well, eventually you're going to have grandchildren that are going to be brought up in that household. And so, wouldn't you like to know what the influences will be on your grandchildren, on their children?" And he sat there and he thought and he thought. And I said, "It's the same thing about mergers and acquisitions. Before we bring someone into our family of our company, we want to know what culture they demonstrate and nurture. Do they have any lawsuits? That's an easy one.
Mm.
What is it that they believe in fundamentally and foundationally as a corporation? We need to know that before we let them in our family." And the light bulb went off, and he understood it when I put it in such terms. And so, that was just one example that I remember to this day, even though it was like 10 years ago. But I remember to this day because he was so cantankerous. He was just so like, "That's not, I don't even get it. I don't understand why you're even talking to me." And like I said, if someone's upfront with me and direct with me in that conversation and very overt, we can have the dialogue and the conversation. It's the person who is covert with it and
Yes.
acts like they're an ambassador for diversity and inclusion when they're really not.
Yeah. And they're the ones holding the finger up, like,
That's
you
it.
know, yes. Oh, I can totally. Oh, I feel you. There's so instances, even in my mind, working in the work I'm doing as well, that are like having that, or why am I here? Why am I at this lunch and learn? It doesn't pertain to my particular department. And I love how made that connection for him to see, this person is coming into your family. And on the organizational level, we want to know the values that align with that next merger and acquisition into our overall family. Because, like you said, you're in this family together. And if you don't know the person fully or that organization fully, how are you going to keep moving forward? So, oh, I love that. So, let's talk more about your book, The Truth About Equity. I like how you shared about framing, when equity gets softened and diluted and turned into performance. What is the hard truth about equity that organizations are still avoiding?
You know, how many times have we heard, Jeba, when a recruiter or a staffing consultant is talking to a hiring manager about an open job they have,
Mhm.
and the recruiter says, ask all the right questions and says, what skills, what capabilities, what work experience, what characteristics do you want? Is there anything else? And then the recruiter inevitably will say, because that's part of their job, I will make sure that I cast a wide net and have a diverse slate of candidates for you to choose from.
Yeah.
And then the hiring manager will put up their hand and say, well, I just want to make sure that I get a quality candidate. And so when I'm
Mm,
in those conversations, I'll stop it right there and I'll
yeah.
say, well, why did you feel a need to say that after she said what she said about a diverse candidate slate? And they usually him and haw, but basically they are demonstrating a bias, conscious or otherwise, that is the first myth about equity. That if you hire someone of a diverse background, a diverse identity, then you're lowering the standards of performance for that role. Or that person doesn't have the skills and the capabilities, or they're basically just inferior to who you have envisioned in your mind for this
Yes.
role, the type of
Yes.
candidate. And
Hmm.
that's one of the big myths, equity, diversity and inclusion, equity, that it is basically you're lowering your standard because they're inferior than who I would select initially. And that person who they would select is usually white male, 40 to 60 years old, right?
Yep.
Um, and then and what I tell them is, first of all, do you not believe that this staffing consultant can do their job? Their
Yes,
job is
that
to
part.
take the skills, the capabilities, the work experience that you're requiring, the characteristics that you're requiring, understanding the context of your team and the organization department that you're in, what your goals are, what your objectives are. And they're taking that information. And you need to understand, manager, that all of those characteristics and criteria that you're talking about can be embodied in a multitude of different identities. And
Yes.
that's what they're trying to say. You're insulting their ability to find you qualified candidates. Their
You are.
job is to find you qualified candidates. Why would they jeopardize their job by bringing you candidates who didn't fit the description that you talked about?
Yes. And another thing too that you said too, Celeste, that I love, it makes them feel like they don't think they're capable to find that candidate
Yeah.
that is worthy of that position. And also, I know you can also attest to this. I feel like in this practice of diversity, equity, inclusion, people feel like they just skip over the equity piece. And I would always say to my clients, like equity and equal are two different things.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean that we're watering it down to make it suitable for us. And like you said, I remember, going into this work and in this field. people want to recruit, recruit, recruit. Oh, we got this person, we got this. But I said, are you investing enough in retention?
Yes.
Because you can recruit, 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 but then you come back and go, I don't know, Jeb, they were here. We gave them all the stuff, but then it wasn't a safe enough, psychologically safe enough environment for them to stay.
Yes.
And I love that when you shared about that hard truth about equity, you not having enough faith and investment in the people in your organization to find the best candidate. And you can have both. They can be of a diverse background and be the best, you know? And I love how you said it's such an insult when they go, well, we
Mm-hmm.
want quality. It's like, you don't think they're quality? Explain to me how they're not qualified,
Mm-hmm.
right? And that's when they get all, but what I said, and I said, okay, okay. I kind of call it the robot, like there's that robotic dance, like, but Jeb, I didn't mean it like this, but it's like, we see, okay, okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Well,
would
the
always
true
say,
essence of what they're thinking comes out, right? Because they can't explain
yes,
it,
yes,
or they
and
don't
that
want to explain it.
yes, yes, because they are afraid of they want to save face, but it's like we see what you're putting down. Yes. So why do you think so many organizations are willing to invest in the statements and in the recruiting and the training, but they still resist that structural change? Like they
Mm-hmm.
want to have this push, but then when you're giving them the tools and the framework, Celeste, why are they still kind of resistant to that?
There's if you want real sustained change,
Yes.
you can't just change the people. Now that's important. You want to have a diverse workforce. That's very, very important at all levels of the organization. But if you want sustained change, you have to change the systems. You have to change the policies, the procedures, the practices. All of that has to change. And you have to assess it and then understand what's getting in the way of those policies, practices, and procedures being more inclusive. You have to look at your business practices and your business strategies and say, okay, what do we need to do to make sure that all of our customers, all of our clients, regardless of how they identify, are able to experience our products and or our services. And that requires not just um, little tweaks. It involves looking at the fundamentals of your practices and your systems and saying what needs to change. And a lot of
Yes.
times those systems are not built with an inclusion mindset. They're just built for, okay, let's go after what's easy, what's quick, and what's the most. And
Mm,
we know that evolution of the United States, of the global world, has changed so much that what used to be the top of the distribution curve looks
yep.
a little bit different, right? And
Hmm.
so how do we there's a fear of, well, if we'll have to slow down in order to rebuild from a diversity, equity, inclusion standpoint. And sometimes you need to slow down just a bit, but the outcome, you got to
Mm,
fix the systems, because the outcome, you're going to connect better with your employees, you're going to connect better
yes.
with your customers, you're going to connect better with your shareholders. It's just
Yes.
the right business mindset to do. And a lot of folks don't seem to understand that,
Yeah.
and they just do performative type stuff, and that's not
Yes.
going to get after it. You have to literally shift the landscape. And
I
that's
love
fearful to
that.
a lot of leaders because, well, I don't want my share price to drop. I don't want to cause any problem with my business. I don't want to cause any problem with my employees. And longer term, even midterm, there are going to be problems that if you just took a
Yes.
step back and resolve this and really think about it, do the assessment and say, okay, how do we shift? And then
Yes.
once you shift, you'll be able to see how you're connecting better with your customers, how your employees are responding to the things that are happening within your organization, good or bad, and then how your
Yes.
shareholders are responding as well.
Oh, I love that, Celeste. And speaking of shift, coming from corporate CDO to founder of your own consulting business, I am so proud of you because I am also in that same entrepreneurial scope and realm as well. I love that when you shared, you have to really decipher what system is broken in your organization and how you are guiding these organizations with your consulting firm. What made you feel called to continue this work independently?
Yeah, I tell you, years ago,
Yeah, yeah.
whenever I was talked to about taking on the chief diversity and inclusion role, I said no. In fact, I said
Mm.
no twice. And when your boss asks you a third time, then it's like, okay, I guess I better, kind of look at this. But it was fortuitous, it was fate, it was divine intervention, it was all of those things, but it was my path. And it didn't end because I was no longer with the company I was with. In fact, it really sort of expanded at that point because I laughed with someone when they said, oh, why are you leaving us? Why are you leaving us? We need you. And I said, because I have to take this fight to the streets. And even though I had a lot of autonomy, more so than other diversity leaders in other companies, especially in 2025, um, I needed to be able to chart my own path to really help people who wanted the help, who needed the help, and um, and also to be free of um, anything that was kind of holding me back from really being able to say, these are the people I want to work with. These are the things that I want to say. These are the projects that I want to work on. And this is when I want to work on it. And it has
Yes,
just
yeah.
been so liberating, so just freeing that I just
Yeah.
absolutely love being on my own.
I love that for you. And yes, it is freeing. And to know you have such a divine duty to have a bigger impact than within one particular organization, and what you have to serve is to serve as many people as you can. And you have to do that on your own, and stuff. And let's talk more. I mean, I'm just such in awe of you, Celeste. From
Oh,
having your own company to even starting your own nonprofit, Destination STEM. This is huge. I'm a former classroom teacher. I taught fifth grade and first grade for 18 years before I went on my own as well. And so when you're talking about helping give your students and students that you are working with in your outreach, that pipeline, for students to enter this workforce, because we know STEM is not going away.
mm.
Why was it important to address equity earlier in this pipeline for our students?
So I saw through my career
Yeah.
that there was a lack of representation of people of color in
Mm.
STEM related fields. So that from my professional career,
Yeah.
my son and my daughter at the time, but we started this 5 years ago, they didn't see teachers who looked like them. They didn't see, even like when they went off to college, same thing. And
Mm.
so, we're sitting around and we're talking. And I said, we should do something. And it'd be fun for us to work together. And so we started Destination STEM Incorporated, and it's basically a nonprofit that says, okay, how do we close that gap? How do we get students interested and aware of STEM related fields so they can say, that's something I want to pursue. That's something that I want to do. Because a lot of times they don't see them in those fields. And you're a teacher, you know that. You
Yep,
know how
yep.
they can be just with they can be put off by some teachers and guidance counselors and just in the little things, behaviors that are demonstrated send a message to students. Students, young people, they're smart. They understand
Yes.
whether you are pushing them towards one path or another. And so we felt that we wanted to get into the classrooms. We wanted to talk with students to say, hey, you can pursue this. Don't say that. Don't listen to when someone says, well, you're just not good enough in math, or you're not just good enough in technology. Don't listen to that, because you can start your path wherever you want to go. So we started this 5 years ago. We provide programs. We go into summer programs and partner with different agencies and firms that have the same vision. And then we also provide scholarships as well, scholarships to high school seniors that are going to be pursuing STEM degrees in college. And we just absolutely love the work that we do. You know, finding my purpose with the consulting, finding the purpose with the nonprofit, it has just been absolutely wonderful. And I love the work. I love it.
Love that. You can just tell your passion. And again, you're right. Counselors, educators, we have such a big responsibility because students are so perceptive, and they know when you don't believe in them. It doesn't have to be your voice, but your attitude, your behavior, the doubt, that grows in them. And so, oh, I can't wait to share all of the amazing work you're doing in the show notes because we need to support your nonprofit and your work and your guidance. And of course, not to be outdone, another author as well. I am so excited to hear more about your second book, The Truth About Equity. Conversations that we're talking about already that we're hoping to disrupt and finally tell the truth about. So, who did you write this book for? And we talked about the systems and stuff. Who did you write this book for? So they know exactly who they are to get your copy. Yes.
Well, at first it was kind of therapeutic, because all
Yeah.
of this work that had been done through, all the years that I was in the role, and it felt like it was just being just unraveled. People were running scared. It's like, what is going on? Even people who were such strong leaders for diversity and inclusion, seeing them just kind of scramble and be paralyzed and not know what to do. So I wrote this book because there is such crazy misinformation and purposeful disinformation planted out there about what equity really is. And so I felt that I needed to get it out there and be a sane voice in the wilderness, if you will, to
Mhm.
those people who, first of all, they don't know what it is, and they're listening to the rhetoric and saying, well, that means that you're preferring one group over another, or that you're lowering the standards, or it's not fair to people like me who are in the majority. And they need to understand what it really is. And then
Exactly.
secondly, there's the group of people who, they were staunch educators around diversity and inclusion and ambassadors, and then all of a sudden they just started like, okay, well, what's going on? What do I do? It's to repurpose them, to say, stay on the path. Don't be fearful, because you're starting to see where the law is the law. It was the law before 2025. It's
Mm.
the same law after 2025. That didn't change. The Civil Rights Act did not change. It wasn't rewritten. And so keep
Mhm.
moving forward, because people are going to look at your leadership during challenging times as we are having right now. They're going
Yes.
to remember what you did, how you acted, how you reacted. And so it's for those leaders and those people, and I mean leaders throughout the organizations, in
Yes.
nonprofits, in universities, that are experiencing this craziness that's happening. Stay the
Mm.
path, because this too
Yes.
shall pass. It will.
Right there.
History
Right
tells us
there.
all the time. At the
Mm-hmm.
time where there was a rise in social activism, a few years later, there'll be this pendulum shift to conservatism, but then it course corrects itself.
Yeah.
Because the bottom line is, diversity is people, it's differences in people, those you can see and those you can't see.
Yeah. Yeah.
Inclusion, how do you get all of those different people with all those different skills, capabilities, life experiences, cultures, ideals, and perspectives? How do you get them to a collective purpose? And in an organization, that's their mission and their vision, right? How do you get
Yes.
them to that collective purpose? And so you surround them with a culture of inclusion so they can feel like they feel valued, they feel like a sense of belonging. And then equity is meeting them where they are with all of those differences and getting them what they need to get to that collective purpose. And that's
Yes.
the essence of it. And majority of people understand that, but there's the the slight few who don't and
Yeah.
continue to echo that anti DEI rhetoric out there. So
Yeah.
we just have to
Yeah.
keep stay the course.
Yes, yes, and keep marching forward. Keep going. Yes, keep going. I love this. And where can my listeners and viewers find your amazing work, Celeste? Because I know this is, I'm just feeling them percolating. Like, okay, tell me more. Where can we get more of Miss Celeste Warren? Yes.
Well, you can go to my website. It's at www.crw, Celeste Renee Warren, diversity.com, crwdiversity.com, and engage in conversation and dialogue. You can also order the book there. The link to Amazon is there as well, to both books. The first one is there as well. And then also, for those of you that are looking to go from intention to action, I just launched a, uh, a mini modules, 5 mini modules that basically go over the equity and action um, training for managers. So basically, it's sort of an offset of the book, and takes and says, okay, what are some things that we can do that I can learn from right now?
Yes.
After I finish this training, what can I do? And it's we understand that managers are extremely busy, but each module is between 10 and 15 minutes long. It's not long, but
It's
it's very
doable.
pragmatic, and it goes over things that you can use right as soon as you finish with learning them. So that's also on the website as well, and that was just launched. So I'm really, really excited about the opportunity to speak with leaders, to speak with leaders across the organization, universities, and I love speaking with students. Just love it,
Yeah.
love it, love it. But
Yeah.
it's for everyone, everyone. And I just hope that people will take advantage of it. You can find me on all the socials. Instagram, it's CRW Diversity. You can find me on LinkedIn as well, Celeste Warren, she, her. Just anywhere that I can get my voice out. Substack, I'm there.
Awesome. Oh, I'm just so excited. And I know I could talk to you all day. It's just like, we're just sisters in the same mission of moving forward, bringing positive change to those who need it. And I love that how you said from intentionality to action, because we know you have the best intentions, but now let's get moving and learn and grow. And I love that the mini modules, pragmatic, tangible, and just there's no excuse. Let's just get going. I love how you're like, yep, 10 to 15 minutes. Let's go. You can do this real quick with your team and really get the work done. So thank you so much, Celeste, for your leadership, your honesty, your commitment to telling the truth, even when it's uncomfortable. And for our listeners, I challenge you in today's episode in the best way. I encourage you to check out Celeste's work, get her book, The Truth About Equity, and always remember inclusion isn't just about intention, it's about impact. And thank you again, Celeste. And for all of you, thank you again for listening. I will see you here, same time, same place. Bye bye.